It was the autumn of the year Olmi. It was the dawn of October 8th, 1895. I still remember the air of that night. It was silent. Excessively silent. There was always sound at night in Gyeongbokgung Palace. The footsteps of patrolmen, the low murmurs of court ladies, the howling of beasts in the distance. But that night was different. There was nothing. Nature holds its breath just before disaster strikes. It was not a coincidence, nor was it a riot by an enraged crowd. Japanese Minister Okhoru. He was a diplomat. However, what he planned that day was not diplomacy. It was the elimination of the Queen of Joseon. That was the name of the operation. Ronin, soldiers, journalists, and gangsters. They were summoned to one place, and their respective roles were assigned. This is how a state designs terror. Orders are given verbally, and no documents are left behind. It was just past 3 o'clock in the morning. Footsteps were heard outside Gwanghwamun. It was not the sound of military boots. Irregular, low footsteps mingled with straw sandals and leather shoes. They were silent. Words were unnecessary, for they already knew what each of them had to do. Japanese ronin were mixed among the Joseon soldiers, heading in the same direction with the same purpose. The gate opened, without resistance all too easily. It meant someone had unlocked it from the inside. That night, the betrayal did not come from the outside. It had been prepared inside long ago. A crowd ran across the courtyard in front of Gyeongbokgung Hall. Feet seeking the Queen's blood poured onto the stone pavement, etched with centuries of history. Hong Ge-hun, regimental commander of the palace guard. He stood in the way, alone. Holding a single rifle, he stood before 100 men. That was all he could do, and he did it. Gunshots rang out. It was not the crowd that fell. It was him. His death was swift and silent. No one stopped in his tracks. He left, having held his post like that, leaving behind only his name. Gojong was there. He was the king. However, at dawn that day, the name king held no power. His arm was seized, his shouts vanished into the air, and the crown prince fell to the ground. The crown prince of Joseon was kicked by a rogue within his own palace. This was what it meant for a nation to collapse. It does not happen in an instant, rather. It is over at that very moment, when the king opens his eyes yet is powerless to do anything. It was Okhoru, the place they headed for last. Court ladies stood before the gate. They blocked it with their bodies, without any weapons, facing dozens of men armed with swords. Because that was all they could do, they did it. I know the names of those court ladies. History does not remember, but I do. They did not utter the word loyalty. They simply stood there. I will not convey that moment to you exactly as it happened. There are things that can be put into words, and things that must not be. I will say only this: it was not fast, and it was not the death of a single person. It was the disappearance of the Queen Mother within her own palace, a witness that an entire nation had to watch. And then they set fire to it. They were trying to destroy the evidence. But consider this: there are things that can be erased by fire, and things that cannot. They erased the form. However, what happened that dawn did not disappear. The smoke rose into the sky, and the heavens remembered. The day broke. The palace was silent. The Japanese side immediately announced it was an internal rebellion within Joseon. They claimed there was no involvement of their own citizens. Okhoru was extradited to his home country and stood trial, and he was released as innocent. Neither the planner, nor the executor, nor the commander, no one was punished. This is the method of state terror. They set a fire, and once the smoke clears, they claim that no one held a match. My name has not been erased since that day. Even though I was burned, denied, and tried to be deleted from the records, I am here. The betrayal you suffered and the injustices that no one acknowledges are not erased. They simply have not yet been sufficiently recorded. Surviving is sometimes the most powerful testimony, and you are still alive.